All right, we are breaking down episode 4, Imposter Syndrome, of the new docuseries from Netflix, Full Swing. And this one, I'll tell you, this is the one that tears on the heartstrings.
Yeah, this was a good one.
It was a good one, and it was so cool to see, not what would I say, not the biggest name in Joel Dahmen getting this level of exposure. And man, if you aren't endeared to this guy and his caddy and their story after this, I mean, what are you? But we got to see, as we kind of like move through this series, we got to see in the first episode, again, so far it's been all very big names, right? So we had, JT and Spieth, and then we had Brooks, Scheffler, Ian Poulter. But now it shows like the wide swath of the careers that you see on the PGA Tour. Guys who are like Brooks Koepka, it's like win or go home, right? Like that's it. And then you have a guy like Joel Dahmen who, like, all the other guys are throughout the episode reassuring him how good he is, and he's like so self-deprecating. He's like, I'm not that good.
That frustrated me.
Yeah, that was a tough one in a lot of ways. But guys, what we've said in all of these breakdowns is these are going to be spoiler alerts. If you haven't seen it, you've been warned. There are going to be spoilers. We're going to dig in. We're going to react to some of the moments here. And we also want to hear what you think. So make sure you let us know in the comments below what you thought about these episodes, what parts surprised you, didn't surprise you, what you thought could have been done better, all that type of stuff. But in this episode, we follow the story of Joel Dahmen. And as I said in previous breakdowns, I was so impressed with the access that Netflix had here. The fact that we were getting the stories, not just from the players, but from the people around them, the story, the caddies, the family members, all that stuff is great. I would have been happy with the series if I got nothing more than just the extra scenes and the mic'd up from the events. Yeah, right. And I've always liked that. I've liked those breakdowns that you get, but here we got extra. We got all of it. We even in the last episode with Poulter and seeing his family and his kids and getting his kids interviewed, you really start to understand these people as human beings more, because there's a very easy way when we're separated by that little white rope, there's an easy to quickly not think of them as real life people, They seem elevated above that. They're athletes that are untouchable. But when we get to see this, we're like, these are human beings who have very similar struggles to us. Yeah. And in this case, this one hit home more than any other, because you didn't see a lavish lifestyle like you saw in all the other previous episodes. We saw in the previous episodes, private planes, huge houses. Joel and his caddy, it seemed like your neighbor.
Absolutely. And I love the caddy story that they put into it, because here's a guy who's been his friend for, a long time. He applies to be his caddy. How cool was that, with that letter he wrote to him? And
you saw, Joel Dahmen, like choking up in the tears when he read this. Here's a guy in his caddy, Gino, right? Yeah. Who just so absolutely was, not only was his friend, but absolutely believed in him and wrote him a multi-page letter just saying, these are the reasons why I would like to be your caddy, basically applying and offering in that moment to sell his home and live in his car. And that's the thing that a lot of times we see, whether it be on the PGA Tour or now live, massive paychecks, and though these guys living incredibly lavishly, what we don't see are the guys who are living event to event. Guys who, and Netflix did a great job of explaining this and explaining over and over what a cut line was. And if you didn't make the cut, it cost you money. It cost you all that money to get to the event and participate in the event, bring your team to the event, and then you make a zero paycheck. So we see a little bit more back against the wall. Yeah. With these guys.
And they wanted to go that route, I'm sure, Netflix. They wanted a story of a guy back against the wall, and they picked, I think, one of the perfect guys for it.
They did a brilliant job of separating out the different characters and seeing who's who. So the main theme and the main takeaway here was that here's a guy in Joel Dahmen who everyone seemed to believe in him but him.
Right.
He was very self-deprecating. I'm not that good and whatever. And we started to see, where did this story develop with him? Where did that personality trait begin? And we got slapped in the face with yet another heart-wrenching story of him losing his mother at a very early age and very quickly. It was within 6 months of diagnosis of cancer that she was gone. And he admitted, and he said, like, look, after that happened, I shut down, and I just developed a persona of almost like it didn't happen. Yeah. And in a lot of ways, it almost felt like that was the whiplash effect against in his life, anything taking it too seriously, because taking it so seriously is painful. and you wonder if that's what happened with the tour and with his own career, because you had his caddy and other golfers saying, here's a guy who can win events and is a top 40 in the world candidate, but he doesn't think it.
He doesn't, but seeing that guy Gino, man, talk about like just the perfect caddy, the perfect guy to have in your life. So you got your wife who supports the crap out of you, then you got your caddy who's right there on the same level. It's like you got to be more positive in that scenario. I don't know how he wasn't, and even to see guys like I forgot who the pro was. Was it JT? No, who's the pro who told him on the spot in the golf course, like, you're better than this?
That was Dan Rappaport.
Oh, that was right. That was Rappaport. That's right.
Rappaport was working with
Barstool.
him in a
That's
practice
right. Yep.
round.
And he told him it, and just to hear it was great.
Told him that. But then we even saw like there were other golfers, like there was a party and you had guys like Max Homa and other guys there and just saying, like, basically being a little bit upset with him that how hard he was on himself. Mm-hmm. But it's a personality trait through and through. We saw him exercising and he's like just the opposite of the shape that every other golfer seems to be in. Yeah. And he's like moaning with like the slightest stretching, and he's just clearly not taking it all that seriously. And then even when we saw the qualifying round, we're between two rounds in the qualifier for the US Open, he's having White Claws because he had a bad first round. Uh-huh. I mean, relatability to death. And I think that's where he's going to pick up a lot of fans, going to endear a lot of people to him. But there's a lot of like these highly, highly competitive golfers, these top 1% of golfers who are like, dude, what are you doing? Which just like take it more seriously and you will be winning.
And the reason I love that Max Homa moment at that backyard party is because Max was probably in his shoes about a year ago, missing every single cut, that guy.
Yeah.
And then finally he caught his stride and like, forget it. The rest is history. Now he's got confidence through the roof.
Yeah.
I think that's all Dahmen needs.
But you're right. And going back to like his caddy, like you would see so many times where Gino would even off the course be like, what can I, this line kept coming up. What can I do to make your day better? What can I do to help you?
Me every day?
There it is. We knew the ask was coming.
I need someone like that in my life.
What can I do to make your day better?
Every day.
That's what we need. But he kept coming with that. And then you had this decision between player and caddy where it's like, should I even try to qualify for the US Open?
Yeah.
And now going back, and I think one of the biggest stories was his caddy, Gino. And you think of a guy and you're watching, like, here's a guy who had sold his home. Like, now he's a little more financially set, but you see where he's living. He's not living lavishly by any means.
Right.
And he explains, like, for caddies, they make anywhere from 7 to 10% of the earnings. If a player doesn't win, they basically make nothing.
Right.
He said they make a couple $1,000s a week, but that basically covers their expense. Don't forget, they have to fly to these events. They have to travel. It costs you thousands of dollars just to do that.
And even that win at the that finish at the US Open, he made $400,000.
Yeah.
Gino's probably getting $28,000 to $40,000.
Right.
Which isn't lavish.
No.
Especially if you haven't won in like a stretch.
So here's a guy, again, do them kind of the math. He probably, based on Dahmen's winnings, he probably takes home around $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Fair to say?
That's probably
about that much.
But don't you think that being they're such close friends that he might break him off a little bit more than the average caddy?
That I would say for sure.
Yeah, it's
because of the gamble that he took on him and the risk that he took.
Forever
I could see, but gotta understand something. Joel Dahmen's gonna have a lot of expenses that the caddies won't. They talk about this, and Amanda did a great job of breaking this down, where she said, keep in mind, a PGA Tour player is like a CEO. He has many people underneath him, swing coaches, nutritionists, all this that are getting paid. So while the tour player is taking home the biggest paycheck, they also have the biggest payroll to pay out.
Right.
So where I think he'd want to give him more, Joel's not living high on the hog. He's got a lot of money that he's got to spend out too. So he can't just give his caddy 50%. Right. So let's say he's giving him $100,000. He's making $100,000 in earnings a year. Anybody out there who has like a family and kids and all that travel knows that doesn't go as far as it used to. Yeah, no, so here's a guy who's like, it's important, to every dime matters. So the two of them, they're debating, should we even try to qualify? And then what's I think the brilliance of the Netflix series is we got to see that. This wasn't like wow, Dahmen qualified. Let's go interview him and ask him how that was. They followed him through that qualifying event.
They did.
And it's a brutal qualifying event because you have to be in the top, I think it was like 12 finishers. And you play 2 rounds that day. Yeah. 18 in the morning and 18 in the afternoon.
And he dug a hole in round 1.
He sure did. And here's a guy who's like, it wasn't like the episode 2, Brooks Koepka hanging his head. It wasn't like episode 3, Ian Poulter throwing his clubs when he lost to Matt Fitzpatrick. This was just Dahmen sits down in the cafeteria and he's like, I guess I'll get a White Claw.
He calls his wife first and is like, I didn't really play well the first round.
Yeah.
Second round, the wind's picking up, so I'm not really, it's not looking good.
Totally
He's a guy who literally almost expects nothing of himself. Everybody seems to expect more of him than what's expected of him. But the thing that came down to is how talented of a golfer he really is. And you saw it in some of the shots that we got to see. But what happened was, he has the White Claw. He's got to make up a lot of strokes, but he goes out and he does it. And he has the second half, he has an incredible 18 holes, and he pushes his way into the U.S. Open. And then that story the story could have been dead there.
It could have been.
And Netflix would, again, and then that's where Netflix has got to think they got lightning in a bottle, because like this never could have been predicted. Not only does it a great story of a guy who qualifies his way in, but then he's leading the tournament. He's tied for first going into the weekend at the U.S. Open.
Right. And how great is it that like they started to talk about the Matt Fitzpatrick story, and then he goes on to win at Brookline.
Yeah.
So I think the next episode is going to be about him. So I think they did pretty darn good.
They did pretty darn good. But here's a guy like, you at least make it to the weekend. He knows he's making some sort of paycheck.
Yeah.
Huge validation with the decision to go and qualify. His caddy, is going to be able to say, I got a little bit of take home myself. But as you said earlier, he ends up with a solid finish and takes home $400,000.
And here's what I would like to see from Netflix. One of the things that we would have liked to see from these episodes, and this is private information, so maybe they didn't want to go this route, but when they put that $407,000 on the screen, I would have loved on the next scene, because I bet every viewer wants to know, show us the math. I guarantee that 407, he's taken home less than $100,000 after taxes and after everyone's paid in that team. Yeah. He's probably only, after all that struggle and in Brookline, making the cut and finishing, all that emotion, he's probably making about $90,000. Still a lot of money, but it's not going to go a long way.
It does make you wonder what the number is.
I want to know the number. I want to know how much they're really taking.
Because like, if at the end of the day too, like I think a lot of these guys, depending on the payout, I don't think they're paid all in one lump sum. I think some of them it's an annuity.
I think the FedEx Cup definitely.
Yeah, because some of them, they'll get paid over time. But you're right. Like you got to think that tax bracket, maybe 30% of that comes out to taxes. Yeah. He's got to pay 10% to his caddy, and then his travel and what these swing coaches get. What
fees for those people.
Right.
So they're coming out, and I would love to even see, like, it'd be cool. Like, imagine, I haven't seen the Finau episode, but it'd be cool, like, if I'm just picking a random episode, that he shows the bank statement when the PGA winnings drop.
Right.
He goes, there it is. After tax, I take it after tax, and I get net 1.1 of the 2.7 or something. You're like, wow.
Yeah, it does make you wonder what the final payout was. And the good thing is the series so far has been very transparent in what they've shown. So who knows what we'll continue to see in the future ones. But yeah, so it was, you had that real heartbreaker. And then the other thing too is we talked about Joel's mother's, death from cancer. But what I did not know was that he had his own bout of cancer.
Yeah, he did.
Testicular cancer, which just like everything else, seemingly, he kind of downplayed and was like, yeah, whatever. He caught it early and chemo, and it was gone. But you got to think, like, what does that do to your psyche as a person who at a young age witnessed your mother quickly pass from cancer, and now you at a young age,
not much longer, like a couple years later.
Yeah, he was in his 20s, and then even with that, even though he's cancer free, the struggles that it created in him creating his own family with his wife, and he had struggle. But it was great to see that his wife is pregnant, expecting.
It's cool,
and then just seeing them going, and it was just like they were a couple that you would want to hang out with, just the way they were jokingly at the stroller store. Like, where do you see this otherwise? You don't get to see that, and it was. I tell you what, if I wasn't a fan before, I'm a fan now. I'm rooting for him wholeheartedly, because again, that's what I'm saying that this series is doing is it's bringing a lot of characters to life. It's bringing a lot of characters to the forefront, and some people are going to like people less over it.
Yep.
Some people are going to like people more. But one thing I'll kind of like leave it with is say the live drama is starting to really build here as we're talking to episode 4. And you think about it, what it takes for some of these guys to turn down that paycheck. Now, I'm not saying he would get offered the big money, but what I am thinking is, here's a guy like Dahmen, right? He might be a perfect candidate for live in some ways, because if you remember, a lot of the caddies started to push their players towards considering it,
For a
because
better lifestyle.
the caddies are have a much better lifestyle and are paid better and
Paid
have
every
more
week.
access to stuff on Live.
Right.
And there's got to be a certain part of Dahmen who might be thinking like, hey, if I did make the jump over to Live, I get to take care of my guy Gino, like
Yeah. Who's been taking care of me?
who's been taking
Had
care
no
of me
pay
and lived in his car over
Right.
me. So I think what we're going to find as we move on through the series is the multifaceted assets that came into the decisions with
Yeah.
Live. And it was teased and going forward as being like where these guys are being put to the fire, their feet to the fire, being like, sure, there's all these reasons, but like what's that cost? And the human rights atrocities are to come in. And now imagine these guys and they're weighing be like, the Saudi and the human rights atrocities and I don't want to attach to that. And then I've got my guy Gino and he could be taken care of if I take some of this money. And
Well, his price tag just went up from this Netflix series. I'm sure.
I would imagine. But
Yeah.
I am very interested to see what each individual player's thinking was, and it'll be cool to let that be presented and let all of us as viewers make our decision of whether we agree with it, we don't. And I think these episodes allow us to put ourselves in their shoes a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which is and less judging whether you judge it as anti-Live, pro-Live, whatever. You got to at least be able to look at it through a new lens when you see these episodes.
I agree.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see it develop.
So far, so good. Halfway through.
Guys, we're going to continue to break down the episodes, so make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss those, and jump in the conversation in the comments. Let us know what you thought. Let us know if there's stuff you liked or didn't like about the episode and the series as a whole, and we'll see you in the next breakdown.